Alfonso Teofilo Brown was born on July 5, 1902, in Colón, Panama, a place where ships from everywhere stopped, but dreams didn't always travel far. His parents, Afro-Caribbean immigrants, worked hard to carve out a tiny corner of hope for their family. Alfonso remembered his father, Horace, as the man who tried to teach him strength without ever raising his voice. But that memory froze in time the day his father died when Alfonso was 13. From then on, life rested on the tired shoulders of his mother, Esther, who scrubbed floors just to keep food on the table. Alfonso grew up fast. He took whatever work he could find, eventually landing a job as a clerk for the United States Shipping Board in the Canal Zone. The job itself wasn't special, counting cargo, sorting papers, doing what he was told, but the place had a strange way of shaping him. While he worked, he could hear the thud of gloves from the soldiers' training areas. Some days, curiosity pulled him close enough to watch. He stood there quietly, a skinny kid in work clothes. Studying men who fought like the ring was the only place their troubles made sense. Alfonso didn't clap, didn't cheer, he just watched. Something inside him clicked each time a punch landed. Not excitement, not fear. Something deeper, like a door opening that he hadn't noticed before. He didn't tell anyone, but those moments stayed with him. They followed him home, into his dreams, into the spaces left empty after his father's passing. Without planning it, without even understanding it yet, Alfonso Brown had stepped onto the road that would change his life forever. And it all started with a boy who simply couldn't look away. When Alfonso Brown decided to turn professional in 1922, it wasn't some grand announcement. No fireworks, no journalists, no big promises. Just a young man trusting the voice inside him. His new manager, Dave Lumiansky, saw something in the quiet kid from Colón, something hungry, and pushed him into the world he'd been dreaming about from a distance. His very first fight came on March 19, 1922, right back home in Colón. The crowd wasn't huge, but Brown felt every pair of eyes on him. He boxed with a calm that surprised even those who knew him best, beating Jose Moreno on points after 6 rounds. It was the kind of win that didn't shake the world, but it shook something inside Brown. He wanted more, and he got more. By the end of that same year, just his 7th fight, in 1923, Alfonso took the biggest risk of his life. He left Panama for New York, a place loud enough to swallow you if you weren't careful. But New York didn't swallow him, it noticed him. His first fight there, on September 22nd, ended in a draw with Johnny Breslin, but the city had seen his style. Quick, cold when he needed to be. By the next year, the Ring magazine called him the 3rd best flyweight on the planet. 2 years later, they ranked him among the top bantamweights in the world. It was happening fast, so fast that even Brown sometimes needed a moment to take it in. He fought all over the United States, pushing his name further with every punch. His first professional loss came against Jimmy Russo in December 1924, a decision after 12 rounds. It stung, but Brown wasn't built to break. He hunted Russo down later and beat him, then defeated Davey Abad and Willie Lamort. A strange night came in June 1925 when he got disqualified in the first round against Frankie Murray. People whispered. Critics buzzed. Brown ignored them. He just kept fighting. And then came Madison Square Garden, May 21st, 1926. The place every fighter dreams about. Brown stood under those bright lights, the crowd waiting, the ring almost humming. In the 3rd round, he dropped Teddy Silva with a punch that felt like a message to the whole boxing world. He belonged on the biggest stage. By October 14, 1928, he was officially listed as the NBA Bantamweight champion. A few weeks later, he crossed the ocean for the first time and knocked out Antoine Merlot in his Paris debut. Paris welcomed him like he was theirs from the beginning. And Brown felt something in that city, something warm, something free, so he stayed. Trained by Eugene Bullard, a war hero who had flown fighter planes in World War I, Brown found a new life. He wasn't just a boxer in France, he was a star. Between 1929 and 1934, he fought across Europe 40 times, beating major names, even former world champion Eugene Kouroukoui. Then came the night people still talk about. January 29, 1929, Brown versus Gustave Humery. They had agreed not to touch gloves before the bell. When the fight started, Humery lifted his hands halfway out of habit. Brown didn't. He moved like lightning, throwing a punch that cracked Humery's jaw and sent him crashing to the canvas. The referee counted 1, 2, 3, and by 10, it was over. 15 seconds. That's how long it took Alfonso Brown to write himself into boxing history. And he did it the same way he had done everything since the day he first watched those soldiers train. Quiet on the outside, fire on the inside, and never asking permission to shine. June 18th, 1929 wasn't supposed to be a day that changed history, but it did. Under the lights of Queensboro Stadium in Long Island, Alfonso Brown boxed for more than a belt. He boxed for every kid in Panama who had been told their dreams were too big for their country. After 15 long rounds, he outworked Gregorio Vidal and became the first Latin American to ever hold a world title. One fight, and suddenly a whole region had a new hero. In Panama, people shouted his name in the streets. In cafes across Latin America, they talked about the skinny boy from Colón who had climbed higher than anyone expected. Even 60 years later, magazines were still telling the story of that night. But life doesn't pause just because you reach the top. Soon after, Brown stepped into a 10-round non-title fight and lost to battling Battolino. It didn't break him. It only pushed him forward. On February 8th, 1930, he reclaimed his footing by beating Johnny Erickson. A messy win by disqualification, but a win that gave him the NBA bantamweight title. Not long after, the NBA stripped Brown of their belt for not facing their top contender, but he still had the IBU title, and he defended it 9 times while fighting all over Europe. May 17th, 1934, brought one of the darkest nights of his career. It was a rematch against Gustav Humery, the same man Brown had knocked out in 15 seconds years earlier. This time, things fell apart. In round 6, Brown was disqualified for rough tactics. The crowd exploded. Fans stormed the ring, throwing fists, chairs, anything they could grab. Brown was beaten so badly he suffered broken bones and drifted in and out of consciousness. By the time police finally restored order, the venue was almost completely wrecked. But Brown wasn't done. 5 months later, on November 1st, he traveled to Tunis for his second fight with young Perez. The fight ended in controversy. Perez stayed on the floor in round 10, insisting Brown hit him illegally. But the referee finished the count. Brown kept his title. Then came June 1st, 1935. In Valencia, Spain, he lost the belt to Baltasar Sanchili after 15 hard rounds. It hurt. This time, the pain felt final. So Brown walked away from boxing. He found work performing in a cabaret, trying to live a softer life. But years of drugs dragged him down, slowly eating at the fighter inside him. Then came Jean Cocteau, the poet, the artist, the friend who refused to watch him fall apart. Cocteau pushed him into rehab, stayed by him, and convinced him to believe he still had something left. And Brown listened. A champion who had survived triumphs, riots, losses, addictions, comebacks. A man who refused to disappear quietly. Alfonso Brown didn't just box. He lived like every fight mattered. When war began swallowing Europe, he chose Harlem, a place full of music, restless nights, and people trying to survive in their own ways. He tried to rebuild the cabaret life he once enjoyed in Paris, the elegant shows, the dancing, the applause. But Harlem wasn't Paris. No one wanted a former world champion in feathers and sequins. They wanted new faces, younger voices, different styles. So Brown did the only thing he knew how to do when life cornered him. He went back to the ring. But boxing no longer welcomed him with open arms. His reflexes weren't the same. His timing slipped. The magic that once came easily now felt distant. Beating Kid Fortune after 10 rounds, it became the final official win of his long, bruised career. Then things unraveled quickly. He was caught with cocaine and deported for a year. When he returned to New York, he was no longer a champion. No cheering crowds, no coaches, just a man in his late 40s trying to survive. He allowed young fighters in Harlem gyms to use him as a sparring partner, taking punches for a $1 a round. Some days he left the gym barely able to stand, but he always came back. It wasn't courage, it was necessity. By the early 1950s, Brown's health was failing. Tuberculosis had hollowed him out. One day, on 42nd Street. He collapsed. Passers-by assumed he was drunk. The police picked him up and brought him to the station before sending him to Seaview Hospital. He never got the chance to explain who he really was. The champion, the dancer, the man who once ruled Paris. He died on April 11th, 1951, with no money, no publicity, not knowing that in France, journalists had just begun planning a fund to bring him home. It took a painter, Eduardo Arroyo, 5 years of research to piece together the story the world almost forgot. His biography, Panama Al Brown, 1902 to 1951, helped bring Brown's name back into conversations where it belonged. The numbers alone tell you this man shouldn't have disappeared. 123 wins, 18 losses, 10 draws, more than 50 knockouts, 6 years as world bantamweight champion, defending his title 10 times against the best fighters his era could produce. And yet, what people in Paris remembered most wasn't only the fighter. It was the man who walked the streets dressed like royalty, who loved the nightlife, who danced in Josephine Baker's La Revue Nigger, who drove flashy cars, who laughed loudly in jazz clubs, who lived boldly in a world that wasn't always ready for him. Brown also carried private battles. In the early 1930s, he contracted syphilis, a disease that left painful sores along his back. Without modern treatment, it's impossible to know how much damage the illness did to him as he fought on. Through all this, he shared his life with Jean Cocteau, the poet who rescued him from addiction, believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself, and loved him when the world tried to forget him. Alfonso Brown's story isn't simply a boxing tale. It's a story of a man who chased stages, rings, lovers, crowds, and freedom across continents. Someone who lived loudly, fell hard, rose again, and kept moving until life finally caught him. A champion in the ring, a performer at heart, a soul that refused to disappear quietly.